All right, good afternoon. Welcome everybody to the meeting of the Mayor and Council. This is the first one of 2022. I'm going to start by opening up and calling to order the special called Villarreal Public Facilities Authority meeting. I'm going to ask for a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved.
I have a motion to adopt the agenda for the special call Villarreal Public Facilities Authority meeting and a second from Ms. Marchman. All in favor? Okay. Item A is the appointment of the chairman and vice chairman. Who would like to be recognized?
I'd like to be recognized.
Mr. Carter.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to appoint the mayor as the chairman, the Mayor Pro Tem as the vice chairman, and the city clerk as the secretary for 2022 for the public facility authorities.
Okay, I have a motion to appoint the mayor as chairman, the Mayor Pro Tem as the vice chairman, and the city clerk as the secretary for the Villarreal Public Facilities Authority for the year 2022. Do I have a second? I have a second from Ms. Marchman. Any discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous. I have a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. I will adjourn the Public Facilities Authority meeting. Okay, that's just a little housekeeping thing that we have to do every year in January. So now I'm going to move into the regular meeting. I'm going to call that to order. And today we're going to have, given the invocation, Pastor Richard Dobbs from the Overcomers Christian Center, and then leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance will be Officer Stephen Alinas, I hope I said that right, with the Villarreal Police Department. So after I have these gentlemen do their parts here tonight, I'm going to say a few words about them, so if you'll stick around. Would everybody please rise? And Pastor, would you come up?
Thank you, Mayor, and everyone that's here today. Let us pray. Father, in Jesus' name, we're so grateful for your presence here this afternoon. We thank you, God, that you're a great God, a wonderful God, a mighty God, full of grace and mercy. We thank you for this opportunity and privilege that we have to come to you in prayer. And we ask that you be with the mayor, city council members, the staff, and everyone who makes up this group as they go throughout this year to serve the many needs in this great city. Father, we ask for your guidance as they make major decisions that affect the citizens of this great city. Thank you for helping them to do their job in a manner that is pleasing to you. I also pray for the grace with each decision and a favorable outcome, and Father, the strength and the courage to make the changes that is needed. We pray for wisdom, we pray for knowledge, we pray for understanding, and we pray for guidance as they serve our great community. We thank you that your mercy endure forever. And thank you, Father, for this opportunity and privilege of prayer. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. And thank you, Lord.
Thank you, sir. Officer, if you would come up and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, sir. You all may be seated. So joining us tonight was Pastor Richard Dobbs, who led us in the invocation. He is with Overcomers Christian Church in Villarreal, Georgia. It was founded by Pastor Richard Dobbs and Lady Cassandra Dobbs. The ministry has served the Villarreal and surrounding area since its founding, March 3rd, 1996. The ministry is actively involved in local and foreign ministry and is committed to empowering and equipping others with God's Word. They continue to serve the community with God's Word while also providing several outreach ministries to include back-to-school outreach, prison ministry, food pantry ministry, a backpack food outreach for a local elementary school, and a nursing home outreach. Pastor Dobbs is a graduate of King's Bible College with a bachelor's degree in ministry and also an alumni of the State University of West Georgia, along with his wife, Cassandra. He has two children, Charity and Dion, who are also both alumni of State University of West Georgia. Thank you for being here tonight, sir. And our very own Officer Stephen Alinas joined the Army Reserve in January 2020. November of the same year, he was assigned to 391st Engineering Battalion as a combat medic. He was hired by the city of Villa Rica in January 2021 and has been working as a full-time patrol officer since July of 2021. Thank you, sir. Thank you for being here tonight. Okay, let's move right along to ceremonial presentations. Every 2 years, the city of Villa Rica holds an election, and in one election, they elect 3 council members, and in the other, they elect 2 council members and a mayor. This year wasn't my turn, but it was these 2 folks here. They were reelected, Councilwoman McPherson and Councilman Danny Carter. And we have newcomer in the middle here is Anna McCoy. Took me a minute. Earlier today, we did swear in Anna McCoy. That's why she's sitting up here, but we will also, she has her family here tonight in a ceremony. Here, we may take some photos if that's what they choose to do. First thing I want to do, though, is recognize our city attorney, Mr. Mecklin, who will do the oaths of office for first Councilwoman Leslie McPherson for a new term, followed by Danny Carter. Mr. Mecklin, if you'll come up. If you guys will give him a handheld mic right there, and I have the oaths of office here. Councilwoman McPherson.
You say them all, and I say I will.
Yes, it's a pleasure and honor to get to swear you in for your next term here. I'm going to read through the oath of office, and at the conclusion of it, if you will say, I will or I do. I, Leslie McPherson, do solemnly swear that I will and truly perform the duties of Ward 3, please do that, you're swearing with your right hand raised, and that I will support and defend the charter thereof, as well as the Constitution and laws of the state of Georgia and of the United States of America. I further swear that I am not the holder of any public money due this state, unaccounted for, and that I am not the holder of any office or trust under the government of the United States, any other state, or any foreign state, which by the laws of this state I am prohibited from holding, and that I am otherwise qualified to hold said office according to the Constitution and laws of Georgia, and will support the Constitution of the United States and of this state, and if elected by any circuit or district, that I have been a resident thereof for the time required by the Constitution and laws of this state, so help me God. All right, congratulations.
All right, Mr. Carter.
Mr. Carter, honor to swear you in again for another term also. I, Danny Carter, do solemnly swear that I will and truly perform the duties of Ward 5 Council of the City of Villa Rica, and that I will support and defend the charter thereof, as well as the Constitution and laws of the state of Georgia and of the United States of America. I further swear that I am not the holder of any public money due this state, unaccounted for, and that I am not the holder of any office or trust under the government of the United States, any other state, or any foreign state, which by the laws of this state I am prohibited from holding, and that I am otherwise qualified to hold said office according to the Constitution and laws of Georgia, and will support the Constitution of the United States and of this state, and if elected by any circuit or district, that I have been a resident thereof for the time required by the Constitution and laws of this state. So help me God.
I will.
All right, congratulations.
We'll go down there and do that. I think they're taking photos. So we did this earlier today, and we're going to do it now, and it'll be recorded for everybody to see. So if you would raise your right hand, we'll do the same thing we did earlier today. I, Anna McCoy, do solemnly swear that I will and truly perform the duties of Ward 4 Council of the City of Villa Rica, and that I will support and defend the charter thereof, as well as the Constitution and laws of the state of Georgia and of the United States of America. I further swear that I am not the holder of any public money due this state, unaccounted for, and that I am not the holder of any office of trust under the government of the United States or any other state or any foreign state, which by the laws of this state I am prohibited from holding, and that I am otherwise qualified to hold said office according to the Constitution and laws of Georgia, and I will support the Constitution of the United States and of this state, and if elected by any circuit or district, that I have been a resident thereof for the time required by the Constitution and laws of this state, so help me God. Congratulations. And I'll let you guys do that too, if you have people here who want to take a photo. Now, I'm going to require that I be in one of them, but if you don't want me, that'll be fine.
Yeah. Now let me take one with her picture and pass it on. Okay.
All right. Now, you only get one along that line. Listen, I like being in photos, but not everybody. All right. You do want to get one with me? Okay.
Yeah, we don't have any friends or family.
No friends or family? You want to do it up here or down there? Does it matter?
I don't care. Go
All right.
for it.
All right. Let's slide this chair out of the way. Okay, that'll be fine.
Come in the middle.
Is that? Are we centered on this? Y'all all want to be up here?
You like it
I didn't
better?
know we was doing it like that.
We got you cornered.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Congratulations, guys. Look forward to 2 more years of this. All right. Well, for me,
No, I think maybe he put his.
all right, where are we at now? Let's get to, well, first let me give you guys an opportunity. Does any of these newly elected, recently sworn in folks would like to say any words? Okay, easy enough. All right, and now I want to recognize Deborah Snipes Littleton. Is she with us tonight? No, okay, that's fine. We'll get the certificate signed and get it over to her. All right. Seemed like I had something else to talk about before I went into the agenda, but I can't remember what it is. So we will go ahead and move on. All right. Are there any changes to the agenda as presented? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
I move to adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
All right, I have a motion to adopt the agenda as presented and a second. All in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. I'm going to move these around again. I'm going to ask the city clerk to make this a permanent change. Public comments come before council updates. Okay? All right. I'm now going to open up for public comments, and when you came in tonight, there was a list out front, and it seems like a lot of you found it. So I'm going to go through these one at a time, and if you are here for a public hearing, there will be time for you to speak when that item comes up. If you want to speak both times, that's fine as well. But if you don't, just let me know, and I'll move on to the next name. When I'm finished, if anybody wants to speak who did not put their name on the list, I'll give an opportunity for that as well. Okay, first up, Joe Ingram, public hearing. Jeff Matthews, public hearing. Jody Mount. All right, Ms. Mount, if you'll come up and give us your name and address for the record, and we'll give you 3 minutes.
Council, Mayor, I'm Jody Mount, 214 Rockmart Road here in Villarreal. 2 grieving families. Our son Shane died 7 years ago. Jeffrey and Shannon lost their parents a little over a year ago. All 3 people were buried by Jay Collins at Hillcrest Cemetery. Shane in the 3rd place of our family's 20 by 10 foot plot, and Sullivan's in the 20 by 10 foot plot adjoining directly behind our plot. We were traumatized when we found Shane's headstone was moved, splattered with mortar, and scratched. You cannot imagine the anguish we are suffering over the disrespect shown towards our sacred private property, the disrespect shown toward our precious son's resting place. Now add that some are saying Shane was buried in the wrong place. Jay Collins was mayor, Barbara Daniels was city clerk. They marked the place where Shane is buried. Jay Collins buried Shane in the place marked by the city. Their actions established the boundaries of our plot and therefore the Sullivan's plot. We are innocent victims of the contractor Lee Rainwater, who has violated city ordinances. Nothing warrants what we are experiencing. We are asking the council and city to enforce the city ordinances that govern all work done in the cemetery, ordinances that you have sworn to uphold. In violation of City Ordinance Section 1028D, the contractor did not get permission from the city to build a wall. The contractor not only built an unauthorized wall, but he built it 2 feet 3 inches over the size of the plot, encroaching on surrounding property, and in doing so, he moved Shane's headstone, he splattered mortar on it, and he scratched it. Section 1025F, I quote, "The contractor shall assume responsibility for all damages attending the execution of any work in the cemetery and shall be held liable for any violations of the rules and regulations of the cemetery or the laws and ordinance of the city." G, "The contractor shall provide adequate protection for his work and shall bear the cost of repairing or replacing any damage done by him, his workmen, or his equipment." I, "The contractor must confine his equipment and supplies to the owner's plot or an area agreed upon with the city. The contractor and any person employed by him shall observe all rules and regulations of the cemetery." Unquote. The contractor violated city ordinances by not getting permission from the city to build the wall, by building the wall 2 feet 3 inches over the size of the plot. The contractor did not confine his equipment and supplies to the owner's plot, but trespassed and built on our property and desecrated our gravesite. This wall is improper because it violates city ordinances. Thank you. And
All right, thank you.
Mayor, I have, after my husband and son speak, I have copies of what we said if.
Hand it to the city clerk. Okay, next up, John Mount. Mr. Mount, give us your name and address for the record, and we'll give you 3 minutes.
John Mount, 214 Rockmont Road. City Ordinances, Chapter 10 covers the city cemetery. Section 1032 quotes, "Removal of improper objects. If any memorial, bench, seat, vase, urn, or any structure or any item whatever, or any inscription placed on any lot of the old section of the cemetery is determined by the council to be improper, offensive, or injurious to the appearance of surrounding lots or grounds, then the city shall have the right and the duty to remove such item." Some have wrongly interpreted this to only apply to the items that are found in the old section of the cemetery. Under common and accepted punctuation rules, this is wrong. This sentence lists items, all separated by commas, that could be written in separate sentences each. Council can determine anything in this list to be improper, offensive, or injurious to appearance and surroundings of lots and grounds. Any memorial, comma, bench, comma, seat, comma, vase, comma, urn, comma, or any structure or item whatever, comma, or any inscription placed upon the lot of the old section of the cemetery, comma, is determined by the council to be improper, offensive, or injurious to the appearance of surrounding lots and grounds, then the city shall have the right and the duty to remove such items. The unauthorized wall that was built up against Shane's headstone on our family's plot is improper because it violates several city ordinances. There are several facts that justify the council determining that the wall is injurious to the surrounding lots. The wall, among the tallest in the cemetery, is taller than Shane's headstone and only inches away, making it impossible to trim the grass with a wand trimmer. And it also encourages the growth of algae, lichen, and fungi that will damage the headstone over time. The contractor also put 4 drain pipes that dump directly onto our plot. City Attorney David Meckler invited us and a contractor, Paul Arnell, to our gravesite. Mr. Arnell said that this was wrong. You do not drain onto another gravesite. Since the contractor did not ask the city for rules and regulations for building a wall, we have additional concern that it may not even be structurally sound and will eventually fall upon our gravesite. There are no other walls at Hillcrest that rise above and are inches away from another family's headstone. No other wall that separates 2 abutting plots that is over a foot high. Most of them just have ground level bricks dividing the plots. This ordinance gives only you, council, the authority and the sworn duty to determine if the wall is improper, offensive, or injurious to the appearance of the surrounding lots and grounds. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Next up, Luke Mount. Mr. Mount, if you'll give us your name and address for the record, we'll give you 3 minutes.
Luke Mount, 1401 May Avenue, Atlanta, Georgia. So this is not a boundary dispute between property owners over the location of a fence. Property owners can hire surveyors to locate exactly where the property line is and resolve that issue. That cannot be done here. There are no surveys or pins or plats for Hillcrest Cemetery. The exact location of your plot is wholly determined by the city staff under the authority of city council and city ordinances when a person is buried. That was done when Shane died and was buried 7 years ago. This is like other code enforcement issues. If a property owner keeps junk cars in a yard in violation of city ordinances, it's not the adjoining property owner who enforces the ordinances and has the junk cars removed. The city does that. If a property owner builds in a setback area, it's not the adjoining property owners to enforce that removal of the build. The city does it. We're asking that you enforce city ordinances and remove the wall that was built in direct violation of the city ordinances. 1, the contractor did not get permission to build a wall, violating section 1028, section D1. 2, the wall is 20 foot by 12 foot 3 when the deeded plot size is only 20 foot by 10. Section 10.1 defines plot sizes. Number 3, in violation of section 1025I, the contractor did not confine his equipment and supplies to the lot he was working on, as evidenced by the moving of Shane's headstone, the mortar splatter, and the scratches. Nor did the contractor confine his equipment and supplies to an area agreed upon with the city because the contractor never talked to the city. These violations justify the council determining that this wall is improper under section 1032D. And 1 month after the march on Selma, Martin Luther King Jr. gave a speech. Said it may be true that morality cannot be legislated, but behavior can be regulated. It may be true that law cannot change the heart, but it can restrain the heartless. We ask that you hold the contractor accountable for all his heartless actions that violated the city ordinances and has caused incredible grief for both families. We respectfully request written justification on your findings and determinations under section 1032D regarding the unauthorized oversized wall.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, next up is Claudia Best. Public hearing. All right. Next up is Cynthia Cox. Public hearing, okay. Next up is Jeffrey Sullivan. Mr. Sullivan, if you'll give us your name and address for the record, we'll give you 3 minutes.
Hey, my name is Jeffrey Sullivan. I live at 162 Braswell Mountain Road, Dallas, Georgia. On December 8th of 2021, I received a work stop order from the city of Villarreal that has prohibited me from completing my parents' grave site, both of who passed away in 2020 and were buried 3 months apart to the day. At this point, the remaining work to be done includes placing sod and placing their headstone, which is currently sitting in a warehouse. The work stop order states that the nature of the violation is of section 1028D1. Wall and lot enclosures shall be approved by the city prior to installation. Upon researching this ordinance, section 1028D1 is published as stating, walls and lot enclosures, where permitted, shall be constructed in accordance with the specification, rules, and regulations prescribed by the city. As you can clearly see, this ordinance states nothing to the fact that any prior authorization is required. I also asked the city clerk's office to provide me with the cemetery rules and regulations prescribed by the city and was given a copy of these very ordinances. As a matter of fact, the only section that refers to having to get prior authorization is section 1029A3, which refers to the construction of a mausoleum. There is also no information for prior approval on the Villarreal city website, and this has been confirmed to me by the city attorney that no permit is required either. Before my father passed away, he met with a representative of the city clerk's office to discuss purchasing the plots next to my mother's, and at that time he communicated our family's desire to construct a wall enclosure around their plots, but expressed concern for the neighboring headstone being so close to where my mother was buried. He was told that he could contact the neighboring family to work it out. This conversation was told to me by my father and confirmed by the same representative of the clerk's office. At this point, we have been told the clerk's office refused to approve any enclosure unless the neighboring family agreed. In researching the codes, there are none that mention of having to get neighboring families' approval to construct a wall enclosure on a purchased plot. The next issue I would like to discuss is the size of our enclosure. When we built it, we kept everything we did to a minimum and conformed to the cemetery's pre-existing plots. Due to the slope of the ground, the enclosure is higher on one side, but is still shorter than many of the surrounding sites. Our lot enclosure measures 20 feet by 12 feet, which is the minimum dimension we could do and still allow room for digging equipment when my sister and her husband pass away, who owned the plots over. This is also conformity with the neighboring plots. For example, there is another two-person plot that measures 10 foot by 10 foot and has a wall enclosure that measures 12 foot by 12 foot to allow for digging equipment and has not received any issue from the city since it was constructed in 2019. I would also like to point out that the section of the wall in question and adjacent to the headstone is built directly above my parents' feet. The next ordinance that we've been accused of violating is Section 1028A, grave headstone markers and monuments to be inside the boundary of the owner's lot by 6 inches. As wall enclosures does not fall into any of these 3 categories, I'm a bit confused on how we are in violation of this ordinance. The city defined wall enclosures in a separate section, therefore acknowledging that the wall enclosure is not the same as a headstone marker or monument. In fact, researching these issues, we have found the neighboring headstones.
I'm going to need you to stop right there. We always stop at 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next up is Anna Perry. Ms. Perry, if you will give us your name and address for the record, we'll give you 3 minutes.
My name is Anna Perry. My business address is 318 Westview Drive. It's here in Villarreal, Georgia. That's where my business is located. Go.
Go ahead.
All right. So this argument is over Section 1028, which was on the stop work order. Again, Section 1028 is very clear. There is no permission that is needed from the city at all to erect any type of wall enclosure. The city prescribes that you have to stay in lines with the specifications, rules, and regulations of the city, but yet when we requested those, we were given a copy of the local ordinances. So it's not required that you get a permit. It's also not required that you get permission. Now, there are sections in the city ordinance regarding the cemetery where it does state that you do have to get permission or you do have to get a permit. Those things require you to do such things whenever you are doing a burial notification and or opening and closing of the graves. It is very specific in the code section that you do have to seek to get a permit. There is also, from what I've been informed, not only was there issue with permission on the stop work order, but there's also an issue as to whether or not the walls were built in conformance with what the plot sizes are. This particular plot, what the city I think has to understand if no one has been out there yet, this was an 8-person plot that was divided into 2 4-person plots. The city never took into consideration that these 4-person plots are going to share a 10-foot boundary line where these 2 graves now come together. That was never taken into consideration, and there was never a boundary line established by the city when they took it upon themselves to divide these 8-person plots into 2 4-person plots. Therefore, at this time, we have 2 4-person plots that now, if they want to have walls constructed around them, which I will tell you, almost every wall out there is constructed around these plots. There's only, I think, maybe a few that don't conform to the ones who have walls around them. So the majority of your plots out there do have the walls. However, the issue is that I've been told that it must conform to the size of your plot. I've gone out there and personally measured several of these. One of those is a 2019 plot that I knew the person that was buried out there. He has a 2-person plot. The walls around that are 12 by 12. They're no bigger than what the Sullivans have built. If you go out there and measure these walls that are around these cemetery plots, they all are outside of these plot lines. There are none of them that I personally measured. Now, I'm sure I did not measure every one of them. There are none of them that I personally measured that are within this same area that are directly on these plot lines. So I don't believe that this was something that was done in any ill will or malice. Also, I spoke with the person who actually put that 12 by 12 wall up, and he stated to me he does construct walls, and that it's very normal that you have that extra 2 feet, because when you have someone who still has to be buried inside of that, you cannot construct on top of a plot line, or you would have to tear down those walls in order to dig the new graves to fit the equipment in order to bury the next persons who are going to be buried in those vacant plots. I'm out of time, so I'll reserve what I have left for the next time.
All right, thank you. Next up, Janet Heilman. Public hearing? Okay. Yes, ma'am. All right, Shannon Pounds. Yep. Well, public hearing will allow for public comments, so it's called that. All right, Shannon Pounds, okay. If you will come up, give us your name and address for the record, we'll give you 3 minutes.
My name is Shannon Pounds.
If you'll get just a little
Sorry.
bit closer, there you go.
Can you hear me now?
I
Oh,
can.
God, it echoes. All right. My name is Shannon Pounds, and my mailing address is 1100 Rainy Road in Temple. I'm the emotional sibling of the two of us. So I typed everything so I could just read it. My family and I have been
If you
supportive.
would just get a little closer to
Sorry.
that mic, yeah, it'll be helpful. if everybody
My
can hear
family
you.
and I have been supportive members of the Villarreal community for over 40 years. During my mother's funeral, I remarked to Jay Collins that I hoped he would be able to brace the neighboring headstone so it didn't fall on me when the time came for me to be buried beside my father, because in my opinion, the headstone looked too close. After the funeral, I told my dad that I thought we should question the city about the placement of the headstone. My father, being the peacekeeper in our family, admonished me, saying they too were a grieving family, and we would do our best to work around it rather than causing an issue. My father, brother, and I met with the contractor shortly thereafter to make plans for the next steps, which included honoring Mama's wishes to have a wall enclosure built. It was our understanding that to work around the existing headstone, the adjacent wall for the burial plots Daddy purchased would run directly across her feet. Shortly thereafter, we all contracted COVID, which resulted in Daddy's hospitalization and death. We found ourselves merely 3 months after our mother's death once again at that same cemetery. I again noticed the placement of the headstone, but Jeffrey and I decided the right thing to do would be to be neighborly and have compassion for the other grieving family and try to honor our father's wishes, and we have attempted to do just that. Once the wall was placed, it became apparent that we would not be offered the same courtesy. We've tried to come to one resolution after another, but it seems that the only accepted resolution so far has been a concession on just our part. I feel that our best interest and the final wishes of our parents have not yet been given the same priority as other parties' concerns. All that we ask is that we be allowed to finalize our parents' burial plans so that we can begin the healing process. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Charity Dobbs. Dobie Morgan. All right. Sarah Jo McCloskey. Is that you? Okay. Come on up. You seem quite busy. If you would just, oh, you're missing two. Wow. If you would give us your name and address for the record, we'll give you 3 minutes.
My name is Sarah McCloskey. My address is 300 Rockmart Road, Villarreal. I just want to say that I support Jody and John and Luke Mount, and that I hope that the council will take this into consideration to make things right for both families, because I know it has been hard for both of them. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay. Mac Pilgrim. Hello, Mac. If you'll give us your name and address for the record, we'll give you 3 minutes, sir.
Good evening. I'm Mac Pilgrim. I live at 128 Maple Valley Drive here in Villarreal. I'm here today on behalf of the Sullivan family. I represented Prissy and David for the automobile accident that ultimately took Prissy's life, and I've known the family. My cousins have married into the family, so I've known the Sullivans for many, many years. And they have consulted with me concerning this cemetery issue numerous times. And first of all, I want to say I don't think either family, the Mounts or the Sullivans, did anything with ill will or ill intention to either family. I think they simply did as they were instructed. However, I do think this is a civil matter. and is a civil matter that maybe should be addressed towards a contractor or contractors. But I've been to the site, I've been to the cemetery, and I suggest the mayor and council do the same before making a decision on this. In and around the Sullivan's lot, where they are buried, there are walls pretty much on 3 of the 4 corners. The other corner being the one with Mr. Mount is located, and that is not walled. The other graves, in fact, have walls on them. The Sullivan wall is higher on one side than the other, just based on the basic topography of the cemetery that required that. The issue with the wall, and if you will, in your mind or on a piece of paper, you can draw it. It should be a 20 by 10. And the alleged encroachment of the wall actually occurs on the opposite side of the Mount's gravesite. The wall that runs perpendicular along we'll call it the southern end of the Sullivans, is actually properly placed. The 2 foot 3 inches that is spoken of is actually in the other direction. So the actually infringed party or damaged party would not be the Mount, but it would in fact be the party to the north, if you will, just simply not to use actual directions, just to make it simple. And so the 12 foot 3 that is spoken of, those 2 foot 3 inches is actually on the other side of the lot. So the actual infringed party is not in fact the Mounts. It would be the party to the north or to the other side of the plot. Therefore, I don't think it's proper for the city to make a decision just yet. A, because I think it's a civil matter. B, I think the infringed party, which would be the other property owners, have not been heard from. And based on that, I would ask the city to table this, to go look at the property, to actually examine it yourself, and to get an opinion from the city council, from the Mr. Mecklin, from the city attorney, before making any decision that would require families who are already grieving and continue to grieve more. And that's what this will do, any sort of destruction to this wall. And as far as the Mount's headstone, I believe it has been returned to its original location as of Saturday when I was there. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Okay, I've reached the end of the list I have here. Is there anybody here who did not put their name on the list who would like to speak? All right, hang on just a second. You now want to speak in public comments? Okay, all right, so it's Janet Heilman, right? Yes. Come on up, ma'am. If you'll give us your name and address for the record, we'll give you 3 minutes.
Janet Heilman, 44 Maple Valley Drive, Villarreal. In Villarreal, there are multiple boards, commissions, and numerous departments that meet monthly or weekly and are all fundamental to the development and daily operations of Villarreal. Unfortunately, it's not manageable for most citizens to attend every meeting every month. I'm going to make the following comments because I'm hoping it could help address the low attendance at the city council meetings and the some lack of interest that we seem to have getting people engaged and volunteers for some of the committees that are so important to our community. There was a Citizens Academy proposed and designed by Dr. Nancy Mims, which began in 2019 to keep citizens informed of current issues and functions within the city. The first was held in March of 2019 and was well attended. The second was co-designed by Chris Montesinos, and that was held at Powell Park in October. A third symposium headlined by Sarah, and I don't know her last name. She was the then CFO, but it was canceled in March 2020 due to COVID. Now, 2 years later, and hopefully post-COVID, I would like to suggest reviving the Citizens Academy to help keep citizens informed and perhaps pique their interest in becoming more involved with the boards and committees, especially at this pivotal time of growth in our city. And I would like to ask the council to support implementing these symposiums. That's it.
All right, thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Okay, anybody else? You want to speak? All right, come on up. Give us your name and address. For the record, we'll give you 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Val Runyon, 2137 South Van Wert Road, Villarreal, Georgia. I've lived, worked, and volunteered in the city of Villarreal since 1981. That's 40 years for some of y'all doing the math. This is going to be a very raw, difficult topic to address because it's involving two things that are near and dear to me, the Sullivan family and the city of Villarreal, both of which I love. Recently, while visiting my deceased Sullivan family, I was shocked and disgusted to see a bright yellow sign posted on their home cemetery grounds. A sign with no written information on it. Evidently, somebody had removed it, indicating why it was posted there. I made calls to the Sullivan children, and due to work schedules and life obligations, I wasn't able to immediately reach them. So my next call was to the city mayor, who promptly returned my call. After vocally expressing my disappointment in seeing this bright yellow sign on the Sullivan Cemetery site, the mayor informed me that it was a stop work order on the work being done on the Sullivan's cemetery plot. While I can understand there are rules and regulations to enforce on posting of codes violations, I think this was one poor decision that somebody needed to be thinking and praying about before disgracing the city of Villarica and the Sullivan family. I strongly feel that sensitive situations need to be handled quietly and respectfully to protect the parties involved. And I'm just confused and dumbfounded how there was a failure to communicate in this circumstance. Knowing the Sullivan children for most of their lives, I can positively say that if they had been explained or notified of the city's intent to post a sign on their parents' cemetery, they would have done anything within reason to prevent that from happening. The failure to communicate is so disappointing. Rest assured, if Prissy and David Sullivan was here, they would have been the first ones in line to address this with any and all people if codes put that on one of y'all's graves and your children had to deal with it. I pray that one of the important measures the Villarica Council will change is to find other avenues to address code violations when dealing with city cemetery properties and plots. Also, that all plots will be visibly marked on the grounds, and that the Villarica Council will fine-tune and approve the existing code of ordinances so there will be no speculation or biasness when having to deal with what needs to be done on city cemetery properties. Having said all that, I do truly appreciate all that y'all have to do and work hard at doing. Thank you.
All right, thank you, ma'am. All right, is there anybody else? Anybody else want to be recognized? Okay, seeing no more, I will close the public comments portion of our meeting. I'm going to move into council updates. Are there any council members who wish to be recognized? Ms. McPherson.
I had a few things, but they seem trite now based on the time that we've had for public comment, which I think is a lot more important than some of the things I wanted to share. I'll save it for another time, but I think this says something about the way open government should operate, and that's that public citizens get to, whether it's grievances, praise, or whatever it is, get to have their say, and it's heard by other citizens and by us while we're sitting here. So that's all.
Okay, anybody else? Mr. Carter.
I've got one thing to say. Go Dogs! Whoa, 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 whoa.
I'm going to let that go. Anybody else? All right, let me close council updates, and we will move on to the consent agenda. So earlier today at 10 a.m., the council met in an open session and discussed a number of items that we were able to place onto the consent agenda. At that time, there was no objections, and I will now read the consent agenda, and I'll ask for any objections, and if there are none, then I will entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda. So this is what we adopted earlier today. Number 1, resolution of support for changes to state highway system and acceptance of 2 roadways. Number 2, North Plant rental aerator equipment. Number 3, Northeast downtown waterline replacement. Number 4, approval of TextMyGov partnership proposal. Number 5, fiscal year 2021 budget amendments numbers 193 through 215. Number 6, fiscal year 2022 budget amendments numbers 22 through 139. And number 7, the approved demolition and removal of Butterballs and the adjacent duplex. Are there any objections to these items? If there are none, is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
Move to adopt the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda and a second by Mr. Montahan. Is there any discussion? All in favor? All right, that's unanimous. We will now move on to the governing body. We have the approval of the City Council meeting minutes of December the 14th, 2021. Council, you've had an opportunity to review these minutes. Are there any changes or updates to those minutes? If there are none, is there a motion to adopt those minutes?
Make a motion to adopt the council minutes. Sorry, I'm looking for them again.
December 14th.
December 14th.
2021. All right, I have a motion to adopt
Second.
the approval of the City Council meeting minutes of December the 14th, 2021. A second by Mr. Carter. Is there any discussion? All in favor? All right, that's unanimous. All right, I now will move for the election of the 2022 Mayor Pro Tem. Is there anyone who wishes to be recognized?
I'd like to
Ms.
make a nomination.
McPherson.
I'd like to nominate Councilman Matthew Montahan for Mayor Pro Tem.
All right, I have a motion to nominate Councilman Matthew Montahan, who is in, I think, his third year, is that correct?
Yes.
On the council,
I second.
as the Mayor Pro Tem for 2022. I have a second from Ms. Marchman. Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor? That is, you're going to vote for yourself, or we're going to?
Can't vote for myself.
Oh, you could.
You could.
All right, you could.
Yes, you
All right. So that'll be unanimous.
No
We'll call it
confidence?
unanimous, and we will move you to this seat
Okay.
at the next meeting, okay?
Okay. Thank you. all very much.
Someone, Madam Clerk, make sure you get him a nameplate that says Mayor Pro Tem. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you very much.
Have fun doing that.
I'll try my best.
All right. B3, mayoral appointment of city council standing committees. All right. I should have fun with this.
Yes.
Give me just a moment. All right, so every year the mayor appoints standing committees. They are typically recreation, housing, library, public safety, and finance. This year I'm going to remove the library from the standing committees, and I'm going to create a transportation and traffic committee. We will handle library at a different, in a different way. I may do that on my own. But for now, I'm going to create the Transportation and Traffic Committee because I believe that with all of the development we've got going on in Villarreal, it is important that we particularly pay attention to how our traffic is addressed here in the city. And by creating a committee for that, we will have our council members working closely with that. So I'm going to start with recreation. Recreation, the chair will be Marchman, and on that committee will be McPherson and Carter. Housing, the chair there will be McCoy, and on that committee will be Marchman and McPherson. For transportation and traffic, the chair will be Montahan, and on that committee will be Carter and McPherson. Public safety, the chair will be Montahan, and the committee members will be Marchman and McCoy. On finance, the chairman there will be Carter, and on that committee will be Montahan and McCoy. All right, Madam Clerk, if you'll make those changes, we will move on now to the mayor's appointment of Phil Blair to the Housing Authority Board. I will appoint Phil Blair, who has been serving on the Housing Board. His term expired, and I will now reappoint him for another term of 5 years. It will begin on April the 1st, 2021, and it will continue through April the 30th, 2026. Next, I will appoint Scott McBrayer to the Cemetery Commission. That term will be from 01/01/2022 through 12/31/2023. Okay? You got that, Madam Clerk? Okay, we're going to move on to community development. Tracy Jarvis, will you be handling these tonight, sir? Ron will do it? All right. C1, amendment to the preliminary plat procedures in the City of Villarreal zoning ordinance. There will be a public hearing on this item. Ron, welcome. Would you please introduce this item?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having me again tonight. This item is for a proposed change to the city's code, the city's zoning ordinance, to amend our preliminary plat review and approval procedures. Currently, the way that we handle preliminary plats in the city, they would go before the Planning Commission for final approval. We're proposing to change that to the Community Development Director and have those preliminary plats reviewed by city staff. The preliminary plat and what exactly that is and why that's important, that's for us to look over only the technical details on a plat. The North Star arrow, scale, things of that nature, things that are just technical in nature that have absolutely no bearings on what is actually constructed there, is nothing that you can see above the ground. So as we have staff that is that's certainly capable of doing that, and as we know other jurisdictions not only surrounding us, but it is absolutely the prevailing way of approving or denying preliminary plats, is through an in-house procedure. So we're proposing to make the necessary changes in the necessary sections of the zoning ordinance, section 6.06 through 6.08, section 2.03, and section 11.03.
Okay, has this been prepared, has this been reviewed by the city attorney?
Yes.
These changes?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, I'm certain that they had been. All right, so when you say in-house, what you're talking about is at the staff level?
Correct,
right?
yes.
All right, let me see if council has any questions before we do a public hearing. Anybody? Ms. McPherson?
Yes. Ron, you know, we talked on the phone quite a bit about this one, along with some others the other day. Is there an advantage, since this would remove planning and zoning from it, and I looked at their vote, talked about it. What is the advantage of it going to planning and zoning? And I want to know if there's a disadvantage as far as delay. So
Sure, yes.
what purpose does that serve? That's what we're doing. I understand it's not prevailing, but it's what we've been doing. It's not the prevailing practice maybe around us. If you just explain that part.
Sure. So anytime that a project or an application has to go before, not just for preliminary plat, but for anything, has to go before the Planning Commission, there's of course a waiting period to get to the actual meeting once someone applies. So that typically is a 30-day process for a preliminary plat. So as a part of our development procedures, and I'm just I guess putting it very simply here, but it's really like a 3-step process, our development. So it's your rezoning application, then you have your preliminary plat, and then you have your final plat that's approved by the city council. And cutting out the preliminary plat from actually having to go to a public hearing would save an applicant right off the top 30 days. So there is a time and efficiency improvement there, but naturally, of course, you're cutting out a public meeting. The public meeting, from a staff's perspective, having at least three public meetings to go through that process, in addition to any variances that an applicant has applied for as well, would open up you're looking at almost 4 public hearings to get a project constructed in Villa Rica. Having a public hearing for technical details, like if the North Star is on there, if the scale is on there, or if it meets if there's contours that need to be on there, etc. Between our city engineer, myself, and the community development director, I'm sure that we could accomplish that. But there would be an improvement as far as efficiency is concerned by not having it the way that we currently do.
Okay, so my goal is, obviously, we follow our ordinances, that we don't torment business people. And I know that can happen sometimes, things get drug out, and time is money. I don't want to do that, but at the same time, transparency is really important. So if we remove that public meeting, we're still having how many other public meetings that would cover this, let's say, development in this case?
Sure.
How many are we still having?
You would still have 2 public hearings, mandatory.
Okay. And are they far enough in advance, I guess, at least one of them, so that you know, people want to know if something's getting built. I understand if there's a zoning, there's a sign. So I'm just trying to give me some confirmation that the transparency is there so people will know if they live near there, hey, this is what's being proposed to be built over or down the street from me or whatever.
Sure, absolutely. So in the first step of this process and for this hypothetical project would be a rezoning application most of the time. With any rezoning application, there's 2 public hearings just for the rezoning alone. So you have a public hearing at the Planning Commission level, you have a public hearing at the City Council level as well. The development or most of anything that you see as a part of a concept plan that's submitted with those rezoning requests are what we are anticipating to see on the ground. So that's what is absolutely the most important for anyone that receives a letter from the city that says there's a project or a rezoning request that has been filed and they're nearby, or anyone that picks up any of the newspapers and sees that there is a public hearing for a rezoning. They would have that opportunity at that time to come forward and submit public comment to the Planning Commission as well as to the City Council. And then even after the preliminary plat phase, when we go on to final plat, we have to have a public hearing before the City Council as well. And the City Council has the final say on if that project can move forward or not.
Okay, anybody else? Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Carter.
Okay, rezoning, suppose this property doesn't have to be rezoned. How do we get the word out on what's being built there?
So anytime we have a property that has not, that does not require a rezoning, there would not be a public hearing for that item of course, for a rezoning, but there would be a public hearing still for a final plat. As far as how to get the word out, there's no requirement to send notice to anyone that's not actually filing an application.
Okay, so you would still do the plat, the one you're talking about here, you would do that, but the final plat would still go before P&Z?
It will go before the City Council. Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anybody else? All right, let me do a public hearing on this. At this time, is there anybody here who would like to speak for or against this amendment? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing on that. I'll revert back to council. Do you have any questions for Ron at this time? Okay, does anybody want to be recognized for a motion?
I'll make a motion.
All right, Mr. Montahan.
I move to approve the proposed amendment to section 6.06, 6.07, and 6.08 of the City of Villa zoning ordinance as attached hereto in Exhibit A.
All right, I have a motion to approve the amendment. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I have a second from Flip a Coin. All right, is there any discussion? All right, all in favor? That's unanimous. All right, thank you. Thank you, Ron. Are you going to do the next one?
I am.
Two
Okay.
more proposed motions.
There's two more
There's
motions.
how many on here?
There's a total of 3
Three
motions.
total
There's
motions.
3 on this?
Yeah,
Give
3.
me a minute. Let me look at it.
3
All right,
sections.
who wishes to be recognized for another
I'll
motion?
take second.
All right, Mr. Carter.
I move to approve the proposed amendment to section 11.03 of the City of Villa zoning ordinance as attached hereto in Exhibit B.
Second.
Okay. I have a motion to approve the proposed amendment to section 11.03 of the City of Villa zoning ordinance as attached hereto to Exhibit B, and a second from Mr. Montahan. Any discussion? All in favor? That's also unanimous. All right. Who wishes to be recognized on this third item?
I'll go ahead.
All right, Mr. Montahan.
I move to approve the proposed amendment to section 2.03 of the City of Villa zoning ordinance as indicated by staff.
Second.
All right, I have a motion to approve the proposed amendment to section 2.03 of the City of Villa zoning ordinance as indicated by staff. I have a second from Mr. Carter. Any discussion? All in favor? All right, that's unanimous. All right, thank you. Now I can move on. I apologize, I didn't have that pulled up. Okay, C2, VA-11-21, parcel number V0200700100. This is a variance application for 29.21 acres on Highway 78. There'll also be a public hearing. Ron, will you introduce this item?
Yes, this is an application from Starlight Homes LLC of Alpharetta, Georgia. They're requesting a variance from section 9.03, subsection 2C, which requires for garage doors to be oriented towards the rear of townhouse units and/or a rear alleyway. We've had a lot of discussion on this topic as of late, and we have a number of different townhouse communities, of course, that have been approved for rezonings, and we've come to the conclusion that that section has become a bit problematic for some of those townhouses to actually meet. The staff has brought forward, and I believe it was November of 2021, a proposed amendment to change that, to make it optional, but that was not passed by the city council, so that has warranted this applicant to come forward and request a variance from that this evening. So they're proposing a 268 units. They're for sale unit townhomes on the parcel. That rezoning was approved in, I believe that was in December of 2021 at our last meeting. So the staff has recommended denial of that in hopes that the applicant can go back to the drawing board for to look at the exterior units as juxtaposed to the interior units and see if we can get a percentage of units that are alley loaded, because even staff isn't sure if they can actually do a 100% rear alley loaded project out there. So staff would like to at least see if not a denial, then we could at least see a percentage that could be implemented for this project.
Well, my question was going to be whether or not they had a percentage that they could live with, but you're indicating that you don't know if there is a number. Mm-hmm. So it would be very difficult for us to establish a number when we have no idea what that would be. But go ahead.
Sure. We're proposing for the interior lots only, being that the orientation of this lot is so narrow and long, which the applicant has also expressed. So we would like to see those interior lots turned and made into have rear alley loaded assets of some form. But we would like to have or hear testimony from the applicant if that's something that's possible at this point in time.
Okay. Well, is the applicant here?
The applicant is
All right.
here.
Give me just a second, Mr. Fowler. Council, does anybody have any questions for Ron at this stage? Okay. If not, then I will ask the applicant to come forward. Come on, Mr. Fowler. You're getting to be a regular down here.
Evening, everyone. I'm Joe Fowler, Post Office Box 49 in Douglasfield. Joe Ingram, who is here with Starlight. The owner is Jeff Matthews, who is in the audience somewhere. The code says that, and I'm quoting, "No primary building shall have garage doors that are oriented to the street or to the road." The request is to permit the townhomes that were approved by the council at its meeting. And I've got a drawing, if I could pass by each of you to show.
Go ahead.
Hey, Joe.
Thank you.
Members of the council, what you see here is a picture of what is proposed by Starlight. And this was, of course, shown at the December the 14th meeting. And on the second page is the site plan that was proposed and reviewed by the council. This is what is proposed, and as you'll see, because of the way the configuration of this property is very narrow and deep, it's difficult to think of any way to make the rear loading garages work. What we are essentially proposing is what you see on the last two pages, and this is from the city's ordinance for single-family attached, and it shows townhomes with front-facing garages on both of those two pages. Our hope is that the council will consider approving the variances. These are the townhomes that are pictured on the ordinance, and actually it was the ordinance that was reviewed by our client when they first made this application. The rationale for the variance request is that because of this north-south configuration of the property that I mentioned, it's simply not possible for the site to be constructed with the townhomes that were approved last month. The ordinance, however, does grant to the Community Development Director a discretion to adjust other requirements of the code. It's the very following ordinance, 9.032D. An ordinance gives that discretion where, and I'm now quoting, topographic, orientation, or other site conditions that make compliance with the distance requirements impossible. Now, that's the situation where the buildings had to be 40 feet apart, but it could be 30 and it could be 20, depending on topographic orientation or other site conditions. Joe will explain in just a few moments, if you'll allow him to do so, that this site is almost impossible. So if we had the luxury of what is provided under section 903(2)B, would be okay, because the staff and or the council could grant the variance based on those considerations. It just doesn't happen to be under 9.032C. We are asking the council, based on that, to exercise the discretion that you are provided to grant variances in the event that there is a hardship. And we believe that's precisely what's going on in this particular situation. We've designed the site with a succession of what you've seen, these east-west private drives, and done so in an attempt to collect the units in a pod and then cluster those around green spaces. And it might be easy to look at the site plan, for example, and say, well, just put driveways right down where that green space is. And as we talked about that among ourselves and trying to think about a way, as Ron has suggested earlier to us in our discussions with him, we try to think if that's a good alternative for the residents who will occupy these properties to have those alleyways in the back. Which do they prefer, green space or an alleyway? We hope that's a sufficient justification. I recognize the council turned down this amendment to the ordinance back in November. We think this is a unique situation that does create a hardship, Mr. Mayor. Joe, would you like to address some of these things? Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Joe Ingram. I'm with Starlight Homes. We do business at 3820 Mansell Road, Alpharetta, Georgia. I think I'd just like to talk a little bit about the ordinance itself. I'm not sure, standing here tonight, that we don't actually meet the requirement of the ordinance. If you'll remember from our rezoning, we're actually on private drives. They are not streets. They are not, I think it even goes on to call them public roads. So I don't think our garages technically front streets or public roads. The ordinance, it feels like it's painting with somewhat of a broad brush. I would ask you to take each site based on its own merit. The ordinance doesn't speak to the actual orientation of the townhomes. It just talks about garages fronting roads or public streets. Does that mean that it is is the front of the townhome still allowed to front the street? I don't know. It's going to add a lot of impervious surface in areas where we've currently got green space planned. I guess to answer the question as to whether or not we've looked at whether a certain percentage of the homes could be rear-facing garages, we haven't. Just it seems like our site plan. I feel that it is the most thoughtful site plan for this specific site. There's no major thoroughfare with a green prints trail to front these townhomes on and put the entry to the rear to be alley loaded. There's no natural feature for the homes to front. What we're really talking about doing is putting an alley in the rear of these homes. And while townhome buyers don't traditionally look for yards and a whole lot of private space, you are taking the only element of private space that comes with a townhome, which is typically their back patio, and you're putting a street in the rear of it. So I'd just ask you to consider that as you consider our variance request, and I'd say I'm here to answer any questions you may have also.
All right, thank you. Let me ask you, so when I look at this plan, and we've looked at this now for a few months, it seems pretty clear to me that it would be rather difficult, certainly a hardship, to have these alleys on the perimeter, for these perimeter units. But on the interior, do you have you, I heard you talk about it just a bit, but have you considered whether or not there were hardships to doing those on the inside, or is it just a matter of losing numbers of units?
It's not even a unit loss for us. I think we could maintain density doing it. I think I guess we're more looking for direction as to what a private alley is, because in my experience, private drive aisles, which is what we have, are alleys. Now, is the intent for the homes to front one another? Because that's not at all what the ordinance says. The ordinance just says your garage can't front a street.
Okay. Let me, David, so we've talked about these private streets before, these private roads, and we talked about, whether or not they were a good idea. But when we think about private roads, because these are theirs, they're going to maintain them, is he making a point regarding whether or not these are public streets and whether or not the facing of these garages apply to a private road or street or something that they've constructed themselves, which might also be an alley, if you think of it that way, because the alleys are typically private.
Yeah, and that's the first time that question's been posed to me, so before I give you an answer based on the statute itself, I'd like to read over the statute.
That feels fair to me.
I'm looking at it, and I don't know, I was gonna ask Ron if we have a good definition as to what an alleyway is. A lot of time, an alleyway is simply a one-lane thoroughfare, and looking at this proposed drawing, proposed development, to think about having a one-lane road that's going to be serving 10 to 12 units. I could see you're going to have traffic jams in those one-lane alleys that you're creating behind the condominiums.
Okay.
Or the townhouses.
Ron, do we have a definition?
Sure. So we don't have a definition for alley or street in our zoning ordinance. Obviously, there's references to a street and to alleyways all throughout the document. And I even looked that up with the applicants on December 1st when I met with them. But I think it's extremely important to note that in this section that we're talking about, there is a distinction between a street and a city road. It specifically says that at the end of the, and I don't have that passage in front of me, but it does make that distinction. So street and city road. The garages can't front on a street or city road. But it doesn't actually define what a street is in the definition of the ordinance.
Yeah, our street ordinance does have some definitions. So a street has to be of a certain width. I think it's 50 feet, maybe.
There's standards for in the development code for streets, which would apply to both public and private streets. But for this particular section, it doesn't actually indicate public or private streets. It just simply says street or city road. So city road is obviously public. So there is a distinction there.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead.
Refresh my memory. Did we vote to make this a gated community last time?
Yes, we did.
So this is not really public streets, are they?
I have to say that, well, we're going to do a public hearing in just a minute, but I do think there is a significant difference between developments that pave and maintain their own streets and even gate them, and there ought to probably be some leeway. And I do think there is a question of the law here that maybe David is going to need to take a look at. But let me handle tonight first, and then we'll see where we're at. Maybe David will have something before I'm finished. Does anybody have any questions for the applicant or for staff before I do a public hearing? Any
I have
council
one
member?
question here.
Mr. Carter.
We were handed two different types of homes. Are you building both of these, or?
The SFA is from our ordinance, is actually in our documents. That's an example that we provide. That's not from him.
Okay, these are the ones you're building?
That's what he's.
That's correct, yes.
All right, anybody else? Ms. McPherson?
Yeah, I'm just curious, Mr. Fowler said it was great pleasure to come to these meetings. How many times have we had you in for our meetings so far?
I believe that was just a nicety, right, Joe? Okay.
No, I know attorneys lie now. You couldn't enjoy it that much.
Did you just figure that out?
No, either one of y'all, for this project, somebody has had to come in and be at one of our meetings.
I've attended 2 council work sessions, 2 mayor and council hearings. We've met with Ron and city staff, planning commission. 5 or 6.
Okay, so, and some of that may be normal, but that's part of why we're making some changes to see if there's a way we can streamline things a little better.
Sure.
And only have you here when you have to be here and that sort of thing. I think my other one is for Ron. So,
Okay,
thank you.
ask him.
Ron, when we talked about this, your recommendation is denial, but isn't that's based on what the council passed about a desire for a rear entry for townhomes, and correct me if I'm wrong, and that we always wanted them to come to us, and this is where I'm going to need a council person to answer, somebody who advocated for this. You wanted this to happen with townhomes, or at least to always have to come to us so we could decide. So you have to remember, I didn't advocate for it, so I don't know the argument behind it. I have townhomes in my ward that the garages are on the front, and as long as they're not the whole front of the house and they're, apportioned, it isn't a problem. So is your no, and I know this is a little complicated, is your no based on the fact that we said, as a whole, as a body, that we wanted it to be rear garages? Is that why you recommend a no?
Partially, and also because we typically would, from a staff level anyway, recommend denial of variances. That's kind of our principle, and that's something that we've been doing now for quite some time.
Kind of
So once it's
automatically?
stay consistent, yes.
Okay, and then it's up to us to
make that
grant and try
decision.
to be consistent.
That's
So
right.
can somebody explain to me, just so we'll know, is the thinking behind the vote on that to have it always come to us so that we can decide, or you don't want townhouses with front garages? Because I'm a little lost on that.
Okay. Does anybody wish
'Cause-
to be recognized?
It was a majority vote, so most people voted for it, and I'm just trying to understand it, because if we're gonna, when are we gonna decide to grant a
All right.
variance? I know where I am on it.
If nobody else wishes to be recognized, I'm going to open up a public hearing. So if you'll step to the side. Is there
Absolutely.
anybody here who would like to speak for or against this variance? Would you like to speak for or against this variance?
Well, I'd like some information, please, first of all.
Well,
Could you tell me?
we're not.
You need to come to the podium also.
I'll let you talk, but we're not going to go back and forth. If you want to watch.
Questions. Are these townhomes private purchase, or are they rentals, or what are these?
He just said that they were going to be for purchase.
They are for purchase?
Right.
Okay, what price range, do we know?
Oh my goodness. Okay, we don't do that. We'll get some of these answers during the process, okay? Yeah. All right. Anybody else wish to be recognized? Would you like to speak for or against this? We'll give you 3 minutes to talk. All right. No, nobody will close the public hearing. All right, we'll revert back to staff and to council. Would anybody like to ask any questions of staff or the applicant at this stage? Mr. Carter.
I'm trying to understand, since we made it a gated community, and took out the private road issue, and they're no longer are streets. Is it really that bad now, since it's a private development, gated community?
Sure,
to-
so
to-
while, I'm sorry.
To have these doors in the front, I mean, I don't see that as a big issue myself.
Yeah, you know, as a staff person, of course, I can only read and interpret the ordinance and provide it to you. However, I think the nuance here, and as I was kind of explaining, was because of the wordage of our ordinance and it making that distinction between a street or city road, it inherently is pulling in the fact that or the ordinance is implying at least, that private roads are also a part of that regulation. Just for the simple fact that it didn't indicate only public roadways, but also just simply streets. How we define streets is there is no definition. So if it's bad or not, that I can't tell you. You know, as a staff person, I can only give you my opinion. You know, as far as trying to reach conformity to the ordinance. And it appeared, at least from a bird's eye view and from looking at their site plan, that it would be possible to move some of those interior units around to achieve partial conformity.
Okay. Are you done? Ms. McPherson, you have anything?
I have a question for a staff member for the city manager. Because
Okay.
I didn't get to run this by you. Ron and I talked a lot about it. What's happening tonight, we're going to keep running into, aren't we? Because we have more townhomes coming down. Could you at least give us a little bit of your professional opinion? Because this is going to happen again. We've got other projects on the way. As to how you see this.
In the 4.5 years that I've been here, we have done almost no from scratch residential development. So when we built houses from 17 to now, they were in failed neighborhoods from the recession. And the new development that we have done has been primarily industrial and commercial. The exception being, I guess, Walton, sorta, but it's not a from scratch, you know, it's a tear down and a rebuild. So my first observation would be that we are in new territory with this. The second thing is that we have a new ordinance, relatively speaking, right? So a second time, we're in new territory. Next of all, both Ron and Bobby, who are, you know, the two sort of drivers behind this, along with Chris, all have been hired during that time. So again, you know, we're sort of setting the bar here. And so my concern, now that council has had the opportunity to consider removing the rear load requirement and has voted it down, is that you view this decision as one that is going to some extent, set the standard for townhomes in Villa going forward, of which there are going to be several. So this isn't just a onesie decision, in my view, because you've already voted to not remove the rear load requirement. And what I heard the applicant say is that they've made the decision to not consider rear load, even though it's required, because they like the green space better, not because it can't be done. They didn't even try. Does that help?
Depends on who you are. Would you like to be recognized? All right, Ms. Promptahan.
Yes, Mayor. So the ordinance reads, building orientation, period. Multifamily buildings shall be oriented to the street or city road a common open space, or cluster to form neighborhoods. So it doesn't say a public street or a private street, it just says street. At the last council meeting, Mr. Elliott stated that private streets had to be built to the same standards as public streets. The ordinance doesn't distinguish between public or private streets, it just says street. So my view is that regardless of whether it's a public street or a private street, the ordinance still applies. The building orientation still applies, requirement. As to the question of why do we want these rear-loaded townhome developments, I was only one of the folks that voted in favor of that by majority. But I think the general view is that it leaves a generally higher quality development, maybe a more walkable kind of development, because you don't have as much ingress egress interrupting the sidewalks or the other walkable areas. But it's a case-by-case basis. So maybe in this particular plan, where you have perimeter, kind of these perimeter units, it doesn't make sense for them to be there because you are cutting into a rear buffer. But perhaps on these internal ones, it does make more sense. You're just moving the open space, from the front to the back or vice versa. Another thing is when you're driving in this neighborhood, you don't see a bunch of cars parked in people's driveways. It gives a more aesthetic appeal. So, and people may have more privacy if their car is parked in the rear, or they can look out their window and see it, versus maybe out front, perhaps, because it's rear loaded and they have more of a private alleyway entrance. Kind of like if you go back behind Gabe's, if you park back there, you probably feel, oh, my car's probably more secure back in that alleyway right behind my building than if I parked in front of Gabe's or in front of the uppercut or whatever's out there too. So that's just my view.
All right, anybody else? All right, so, sounds like to me, so
It's just a practical concern.
I was absent in November when this change, I guess, came before the council. It sounds like to me, listening to Ms. McPherson, there was some indication by someone on this council that these should be looked at on a case-by-case basis if that change were not made to the ordinance itself. I feel like that in this particular case, it is a heavy burden, and what you are faced with here is possibly varying the perimeter and then enforcing the ordinance in the interior, or varying the whole thing. This being a private development, though, with private streets gated, where you don't have through traffic, feels to me like that mitigates a lot of the concern that you're talking about, Councilman Montahan. So, I don't know, I think that the council should probably consider that, but does anybody want to say anything else before I ask the council to motion?
Can I offer up one thing to what Councilman
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Montahan said? If the concern is pedestrian flow on sidewalks, then we would be happy to entertain the idea of a 20-foot requirement from the rear of the sidewalk to the front face of the garage. That gives you room to park a vehicle. If people are going to park on driveways, you know, we require vehicles to be parked in garages, but it never fails. So by incorporating, call it garage separation from rear of sidewalk, you give them that space to park a vehicle without interrupting that pedestrian flow. Mm-hmm. And you've also got sidewalks on both sides.
So there's sidewalks on both sides of the street? Okay, wow. Okay, all right.
Well, I think, but looking at the typical lot layout, though, I think you already have a minimum 20-foot sidewalk, minimum 20-foot driveway length.
That's right. I mean, we do.
Well, it does say to back a curb or sidewalk if applicable, so.
We didn't initially plan for sidewalks on both sides of the street, so that's why the difference between back of curb and back of sidewalk. But the reason for that 20 feet that you're looking at is that very thing.
Right. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that concession that you'd be willing to consider isn't really a concession because it was already planned for here. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, did I understand that you're going to have sidewalks on both sides of the street? Did it? You
Yes,
just-
sir.
Okay.
All right. Anything else? Anybody got
So
anything else?
I would
'Cause
like to, if I can,
All right, go ahead.
I'm kind of inclined to want to table this in the hopes that maybe you can come back and give us some different proposals where you do show us what it might look like with the staff's recommendation, or with a full, maybe different grades. I don't know how difficult it would be to come up with a new site plan on that. Would that be something you would be considered?
It's something we can consider. I'd like to know what it is I'm designing. If we're not calling our private, I guess I just don't know what an alley is. And
Sure.
is the intent for the garage not to face the road? Does the townhome still face the street? Is it a dual facing product? I don't understand the ordinance as
Right.
written.
I know Jeff Fuquay has a proposed development in this area, and he's doing rear-loaded townhomes. So perhaps staff can give you some examples that they received from his projects. And then from there, maybe we can get we could possibly get a different ones to look at, so we can actually visualize the kind of what we're approving and what we're denying, whatever it may be. Would that be something you could work with staff on?
Yes.
I would appreciate, okay.
I think it is going to be important for us also to figure out exactly how we're going to define what an alleyway is, because otherwise we're just simply requiring them to build another street in the back of the house so that you have a street on the front and on the back. And that's the question, is what purpose does that serve? So we need to define what an alleyway is. If it is going to be a street, then
Is there a particular hardship to tabling this another month? I mean, it seems like to me you guys have been here for 5 or 6 months straight.
That's what I'm saying. We
I
cost people money.
hang on a second. I want to hear from you if you can do another one of these, or if you want something, if you would like to resolve this thing tonight. I know you'd like to, but
I don't want to force an unwanted decision, honestly. I mean, I don't want to be an obstructionist, honestly. We want to move forward with the project as soon as we can, as I'm sure Mr. Matthews would like us to. I truly believe in the site plan that we have put forward. I think, as I said, there are unintended consequences of a revised plan to include the alleys. I don't understand, I guess, you want to add more impervious surface where you would otherwise have green space, and I don't understand why you would. I think that we've been building homes for a long time and understand what home buyers want with the product that they buy, and there are absolutely areas where it makes sense to do a rear-loaded townhome like we are talking about. I do not feel that is the site for it. These folks, like I said, you were taking their one area of retreat on the exterior of the homes, which is the patios, and you're now putting a private alley through it, and really taking away any sense of privacy that they would have back there.
I do think that there is not a one size that fits all, and there really never has been. And this thing does have to be looked at. We've looked at it at the staff level a couple times. I didn't realize that it had gotten to this point here. It sounds to me like at some point in November when this was considered, somebody must have led the council to believe that these should be looked at on a case-by-case basis, not out and out denied every single time they come before us. So my question is still the same to you. It feels like we're behind a little bit because we still have questions here, but can you do another 30 days, or is that a particular hardship that you...
There is potentially a hardship with it. We've got a contractual closing date, which, you know,
I think about that, I think about financing, I think about things falling through. That's why I'm asking you, I don't know. I've never talked to you outside of this room.
Sure.
So,
Yes, we have contractual obligations. I would like to move this forward this evening.
okay. All right, does anybody have any other questions? All right,
I
Ms.
would,
McPherson.
I would just say that amongst most of the property that we have left to build on in Villa Rica, there's a reason it wasn't built on. Topography, difficulties, creeks, different things that makes it, or maybe the way it's designed, narrow, what's left of it, and you have to build on what's there. I hate to see us, because of our newness, or new territory, or new people with new territory with new ordinance, that there be torment on people who want to do business and lose money because they come to us because we don't have our act all together. And I know government is messy, and that's the way it is, but we're going to have to decide what we want, get these definitions. If there's any way we could allow them to move forward, do we have to know the alley definition? I mean, I'm more than ready to make a motion, but I know we can't treat these all the same. The property is different, and I do agree that there's areas where it would be more appropriate. I think it's inappropriate to demand the one size fits all for everyone. And I would like to see us move on this.
All right, then make a motion.
Despite
Go ahead, if you want to get to some discussion, go ahead and make a
despite
motion.
my best efforts to keep my screen up, and with the help of the IT guy, when I don't move something, it all disappears. It disappears and makes me put in a password again. So, but to the best of my memory, I would like to make a motion to grant the variance.
Request from Starlight Homes LLC of Villarreal, Georgia from section 9.032C. Is that
Yes.
correct?
I'll
All right.
second that.
I have a motion to grant the variance request from Starlight Homes LLC of Villarreal, Georgia from section 9.032C and a second from Mr. Carter. Is there any discussion?
I have some discussion, a
Go
discussion
ahead.
point.
Mr. Montana.
I think the reason why I asked if they would consider tabling of this is kind of goes to Tom's point to where they didn't even try. And I would like to see them at least try to comply with the ordinance before we have to make an up or down decision on that. So for that reason, I'm going to vote against your motion, Councilwoman McPherson. But in the event that it fails, then I'll make a motion to table, just to point that out.
Okay. And so does anybody else want to be recognized before all right, Ms.
I would say I appreciate that, and I ask for Tom's, professional opinion on what's going on and how he sees this and all. At the same time, I hate to see us continue to drag this out, and I think what their emphasis has been, whether they tried or not, what they're trying to do is provide what they think is the best quality product for what the market wants. And I think it's hard for us to sometimes, sitting up here, to define the market. Not being in the business, you would not want to ask me what the market is demanding right now. I have some ideas. I do a lot of reading. I do some research. But my concern is that the quality of the project would be detrimental even by looking at what it would end up being. So is there a motivation to try to do that if you don't think that's what people want and what they'll buy? If you're selling something, you want something that people are going to buy.
Mr. Mayor, may I make
That's
one
it.
comment?
I'm sorry. I
No.
know I've.
No. All right.
One last thing.
All right. Mr. Carter.
All right, now, what sways me is I'm in favor of the green space rather than putting concrete between the buildings, so I would like to see us keep more green space if at all possible.
All right. Anybody who hasn't spoken, want to say anything? All right. I've said it already. There's not a one size that fits all on these. I'm going to say to you right here, I think these front-loaded single-car garages are not the most attractive. They're not my favorite thing to do. That's not why this seems like it works. It works for me because I think that when you have a private development, you pay for your own streets, you put in all these sidewalks, you put in gates, it makes a difference. And I also think that there are difficulties here that would mean that you would have to do some sort of a mixed front-loaded and rear-loaded if we were going to require those rear-loaded anyway. So it doesn't seem like you could even get it done here, regardless of how much you tried or didn't try. Not to mention the fact you've been here 4 or 5 times already, several months, and if there was some of that needed to happen, it should have happened at the staff level already. So we have a motion to approve the variance request from Starlight Homes LLC of Villarica, Georgia from section 9.032C. And we have a second. All in favor? All opposed? That motion will pass 3-2. Go build them. All right. Next up, C3, VA-12-21, parcel number V070100167. This is a variance application for 12.69. Give you all a minute to finish whatever you're doing.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, 12.69 acres located at 700 to 740 Hickory Level Road. There'll also be a public hearing on this. Ron, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Villarica RTH owner LLC of Atlanta, Georgia, is requesting a variance from side yard setbacks and which would impact 2 units on the site, as well as relief from both the 50-foot and the 75-foot stream buffers in certain section of the parcel. For the side yard setback variance, 15 feet is required, whereas 5 feet is requested on Unit 101 on the site plan, and 10 feet on Unit 110 on the site plan. The 50-foot stream buffer is proposed to be encroached upon by 22,564 square feet, and the 75-foot stream buffer is proposed to be encroached upon by 34,622 square feet. The staff is recommending denial of the side yard setback variance and approval of the stream buffer variances.
Okay, so there are 3 parts to this. Is there any questions for staff at this stage? There'll also be a public hearing. Ms. McPherson. Oh, sorry. I saw her
okay.
turn her mic on. Go
I don't
ahead.
have a question. I just want to point something out.
Wait, no, Ms. McPherson.
2 units. Is that what we're talking about, the 110? All this relates to just 2 units?
The
Part of
side
it,
yard
the-
setback.
The
does.
setback?
Yes.
Okay, and that's the one with the stream buffer, okay.
I just wanted to
All right,
point
Mr.
out.
Moptahan.
If you look at in our civic clerk here, in order to pull up the actual site plan for this, you have to go to the work session. So if you want to see the lots that are going to be impacted, you have to pull up the site plan. It's in the work session, but it's not in the regular council.
Yeah, since you brought it up, let me just go ahead and clarify that. Are you, Madam's Clerk, are y'all aware that the items in the work session did not transfer over to the regular session?
No, that particular one.
That needs to happen every time. All right, go ahead. Are you done?
That was it.
Okay, anybody else at this stage? Okay, let me open this up for a public hearing. Is there anybody here who would like to speak for or against this variance application? All right, seeing none, we'll go back to Ron. Let's see, who's the applicant? Is the applicant here? Sir, would you like to come up and say a few words?
My name is Adam Bunn. I'm with Villarica RTH owner.
You're with who?
Villarica RTH owner, the applicant.
Okay, go ahead.
Yep. I'd just like to say we appreciate Ron and Bobby's work. We've been working on this project for about 1.5 years now and gone through some changes. But I just would say that it is a tight site. There are a lot of constraints to this site. There's a lot of rock on this site, which is a financial burden. So we would appreciate the requested variances.
Okay, council, does anybody have any questions for Mr. Bond? No relation to James, I'm guessing?
No.
All right. Okay, all right, thank you. We'll go back to staff. Council, any questions for staff? All right, if there
Ron?
are none, all right,
Well-
Mr. Moptahan.
So Ron, is there, staff recommended approval on the stream buffer variances? Is that
That's correct.
That's correct. And so, and it says side yard setbacks are considered self-imposed, whereas stream buffer requests considered bona fide topographical hardship. Is it feasible whatsoever to just do the outer 25 instead of the entire 50? Or the outer 25 instead of the entire 50? Where it's only 50 feet from the center line on the stream buffer?
I'm not sure if I understand your question.
Well, if you look at the center, it's a total of 75 feet. The buffer is 75 feet from the center line of the creek, right?
Correct, yeah.
So instead of the recommendation being for approval to give them the entire 50 foot of the city's buffer, because they can't touch the state's 25, was there any consideration to only give them 25 feet of the city's 50-foot buffer? Does that make sense?
Sure, yes.
Okay.
Yes. I have not looked at that, and I have not considered that throughout for their development. I looked at the cross-hatched areas that are on the site plan, and and I looked at the hatched areas throughout the site, both for 75 and 50, and the roadway that goes through here would cut out a tremendous number of units because it goes through the stream buffer. So if we don't actually grant the entirety of the stream buffer in the areas here on the site plan that the road actually goes through, then all of those units in the rear would not be able to be constructed.
Well, I guess, so, and I should have clarified, I'm sorry, I was really focused on the portions of the buffer that affected the actual lots, not the street. I think it's pretty fair to say, we could probably give it to them on the street because that would basically nix the entire second half of this development. But if you're looking, for example, at lots 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 87, 89, 89, 90, 91, 90, probably not 92 or 93. But those lots, if you just give them the outer 25 instead of the entire 50, they could probably salvage those lots and we would still keep some of our buffer. I guess that's more or less my question. Was that a consideration?
Sure, I understand. And I'm just taking a quick look at the site plan, but we did, to answer your question, we did not look at that. That was not part of the consideration, but I would like to kind of to hear, I guess, from the applicant in a sense to see if that's something that's workable for them.
Hang on a second, but I am going to hear from you on that. Is there any other questions for Ron? All right, that is a question, sir. Mr. Bond, if you'll come back up. Did you understand the question from Mr. Montahan?
Yes, I did.
Have you considered that?
As Ron said, regardless if we were going to build this project, our road would have to encroach on that buffer to serve the back, 3/4.
Let's say it was granted on the road, though.
Right.
What about the others? What about the actual lots?
The actual
units.
lots, we would lose a substantial number of lots. If you're looking at the site plan, the north side of the site, there's a large amount of rock on that site that kind of falls off north to south. So to be able to position those lots any further north and then shift the site plan kind of north to get these buildings out of the buffer, it would be an
But even if you grant 25 foot as opposed to the whole 50,
Right.
you're still impacted that way?
Yes, we would still be impacted on a large number of our townhomes.
Okay, I think that was his question.
Okay.
All right, anything else, Mr. Montan?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why if we're giving you if you're looking at the site plan on, like I said, for example, 8 lots, 81 through 85, if we only give up the 25-foot buffer on that, how would that cause you to shift the other units
Well,
up?
83, 92, 93, and 91 all encroach on that. So we'd either lose those units or
Is that 5 units?
it would be a total of, I believe 5 units, correct?
How many units do you have proposed in here?
Do you have the? Can you zoom?
110.
Can y'all zoom in on that?
Say it again.
110.
Okay.
on the, scroll down, like right here. Okay, 82, 83, 84, 85 are all within the 25 foot. It's a 50-foot total. What I'm saying is if I give you this, you still got to keep this. How does that kill those lots?
I mean, I have to look at it closer, but yeah, I mean, they possibly could stay.
Okay. And then same thing for here.
Up in the corner.
Up in the corner. Right, well, these here.
Yeah,
except for
those.
like, these two are probably dead, but these two here, I mean, you agree I could give you those, right?
Yes, agree.
All right. And then if you go pop up here, I mean, sure, you can have the whole, for the street, I get it, but for here, I mean, you're talking about these folks' front yard. I don't see, if I give you that, I don't see how that's a.
How you lose units.
Okay.
Is that right?
I mean, I believe that's correct, but Ron, I'd have to ask you, I mean, if we are doing any improvements in the buffer at all, we need the variance, correct? It's impervious. So.
I mean, so would you be willing to work on some of that buffer? Or,
I mean,
I guess-
how would we write a language in the variance to grant us an impervious buffer within the 75 and 50 for roads, driveways, sidewalks, and any other hardscape improvements?
sounds like that would work, right, Ron? Okay. And then you would just maintain the 50-foot buffer when it comes to the lot, the units lots.
Is that it?
I think that's all I have, yes.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have a question for the applicant while he's up here? All right. Thank you, sir. I might not call you back up again. Trying to help find a way to get. So, all right, Ron, come back up. Does anybody have any questions for Ron on any of these three pieces to this? All right. Am I sensing that you have a motion? Wait, I got to do a public hearing. Did I do a public hearing already?
No.
Lord have mercy. All right, let's do a public hearing. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak for or against this variance application? All right, seeing nobody.
You did do one.
You did.
Okay, see, it's starting to get late. All right, am I sensing a motion down there,
It's just beginning.
Mr. Montahan? If not,
Yeah, I think I have one.
all right, well, let's
Okay.
start with number one.
Actually, I hadn't really
You don't
given
wanna
much
do any of 'em?
consideration on the side yard setback. So if someone has a motion for that one,
Anybody?
I'll yield. Okay, I'll make a motion to deny the side yard setback variance request by Villarreal RTH owner LLC of Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay. All right, that's also the recommendation. So,
Yes.
I have a motion to deny the side yard setback variance request from Villarreal RTH owner LLC of Atlanta, Georgia. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Carter seconds that. Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor to deny that? All right, that's unanimous. All right, number two, who would like to be recognized?
I
Ms.
would.
McPherson.
I move to approve the variance to encroach into the 50-foot stream buffer by 22,564 square feet in areas as indicated on the supplied site plan dated September 9, 2021.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, I have a motion to approve the variance to encroach into the 50-foot stream buffer by 22,564 square feet in areas as indicated on the supplied site plan dated September the 9th, 2021. And a second by Mr. Montahan. Is there any discussion? All in favor? All right, that's unanimous. All right, who wishes to be recognized for a motion on number three?
Okay.
All right, Mr. Montahan.
I move to deny the variance to encroach within the 75-foot stream buffer in areas as indicated on the supplied site plan dated September 9, 2021, except for surfaces that are roads, landscaping, hardscaping. Ron, what else did we say?
I mean, that covers the vast majority of it. Driveways.
Driveways, sidewalks.
all-
Okay. Thank you.
All right, I have I can't even remember what that was.
It is a motion.
All right, is there a second, though? All right, that motion will die for lack of a second. Does anybody else wish to make a motion on number 3?
Yes.
Ms. McPherson.
I move to approve the variance to encroach within the 75 feet stream buffer by 34,622 square feet in areas as indicated on the supplied site plan dated September 9th, 2021.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, I have a motion to approve the variance to encroach within the 75-foot stream buffer by 34,622 square feet in areas as indicated on the supplied site plan dated September the 9th, 2021, with a second by Mr. Carter. Is there any discussion? If there's no discussion, all in favor? All opposed? That motion will carry 3-2. All right, let's move on to number 4. VA-13-21, parcel number VO701102030, variance application for 16.06 acres at 135 and 189 Commerce Drive. There will be a public hearing on this. Ron, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. MMCC LLC of Villarica, Georgia is requesting 3 variances from landscape buffer requirements, front, side, and rear yard setback requirements, and 50-foot and 75-foot stream buffer requirements. This is for a proposed apartment complex that is a 305-unit complex with a commercial out parcel on the front with 3 amenities and 2 entrances. This property came before the council in December of 2021 as well for rezoning, which was passed. And the applicant is looking for regarding the reduction of the landscape buffer to reduce it from 30 feet to 20 feet in favor of planting denser, denser planting regimen within the 20-foot buffer. They're looking also for an encroachment into the 50-foot and 75-foot stream buffers by 9,273 square feet for the 50-foot and 16,706 square feet for the 75-foot, and also a reduction of the required front, side, and rear setback. So the required front yard setback is 35 feet and 40 foot for the side and the rear yards, and they want to reduce those to 20 feet around the entire perimeter of the site.
Okay, are there any questions for staff?
Yes.
All right, Ms. McPherson.
I'm a little concerned about the reduction in the buffer. So explain to me what's the difference between, okay, so they want to cut off 10 feet. They want to go from 30 to 20? Is that right?
That's correct, yes.
But it's denser. So I don't know if you're going to need to answer that or they need to answer that, but I need a definition of, okay, we're going to have less buffer, but it's going to be denser.
Sure. So we actually have not received, which is not uncommon, but we have not received a landscape plan at this time. So I don't know exactly what denser, what they're proposing when they say denser. However, being that you are shaving off 10 feet, of course, and being closer to the residential properties, of course, that denser planting would be, of course, something that we want.
That's what I'm thinking. There's a reason we put that 30 feet in there, right? And
Sure.
the properties that are around. And I'd like to know how you cut off that 10 feet and still get the buffer that we think is necessary or that we have. There's a reason we have it in our ordinance. Okay.
All right, and we'll ask the applicant in a moment. Mr. Pro Tem.
So Ron, just to clarify, they asked for a variance on a landscape buffer proposing to make something more dense, but they didn't give us a proposed landscape plan to consider?
That is correct.
Okay.
All right, any other questions for staff before I bring up the applicant? Is the applicant here?
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Jeff Matthews, 215 West Bankhead Highway, Villarica, Georgia. And we're here once again to talk about this piece of property. And I won't bore you with going through all the details, but I do have Mr. Ken Wood with Planners and Engineers Collaborative here this evening, who can certainly attest and address any specific concerns. As I've told you before, I know when to hire somebody that has much more ability to use a slide rule than I ever learned how to do. But this piece of property, and Ms. McPherson referred to this earlier, that every piece of property is unique, and there is no one size fits all. This piece of property, if you look at any real estate school, the first thing they teach you that real estate is non-homogeneous. It's all different. Every piece is unique. There is no cookie cutter in this type development. But this piece of property was part of the Leathers estate in 1972, and this is part of why we're seeking variances, because there were some hardships created, because in 1972, GDOT and the Federal Highway Administration built I-20. They cut nearly 19 acres out of the middle of this piece of property. That left some property on the south side of 20, which was now part of what Home Depot is. Ms. Leathers sold into that deal. And there was another portion of it, about 39 acres, on the north side, and it had no access. DOT gave them a diminution in value at that time, but they had 39 acres that was on the north side that they couldn't get to. They couldn't have cows, they couldn't raise corn, they couldn't do anything except grow trees, which it has done. Since then, and by the way, DOT did that with the ability to condemn their piece of property. It was not a voluntary, we're going to sell it to DOT just because we've agreed on something. So they took 19 acres, leaving 39. Since then, the school board has bought about 14 acres, which is where the current ball field sits on your map. And so that left 15.05 acres, which we bought, and then we have contracted with Wood Partners, who is going to do a Class A apartment complex. The reason, and I'll let Mr. Wood address any of the specifics here, but when I-20 was built, there was a little small drainage ditch down through this piece of property, running north to south. It actually runs across this piece of property, which further complicates the utility of the tract. But when I-20 paved all that right-of-way out there, it increased the runoff, and so now we have a stream over there, which we understand the 25-foot state buffer. We'll have to do the same thing that the school did. We'll have to get a nationwide permit to go into, or to put a pipe in the creek and cross that. But the areas that we need to encroach, and I don't know how we got an extra 50 feet and 75 feet total, but if you look at a piece of property, if it's only got 1,000 feet of creek through it, a 75-foot strip on either side takes out about 3.5 acres. So it's a pretty good impact by increasing those buffers. The state 25 is a pretty good number, but when you jump it up to 75 feet, it really creates a hardship. Now, I mean, do you want to do these things one at a time, or do you want to, let me talk about the landscape buffer?
I'm gonna let you do whatever you want to do.
Okay, good. I appreciate that. I could preach on this one.
How you want to.
We've been on this one long enough. It deserves a sermon. The setback variances are, this will be a gated private street community. It'll have a full set of amenities, green space, et cetera, et cetera. And in so doing, we feel like we will have more impervious or non-impervious structure with a new little change we found out we can do on the parking, because we thought we had to park a lot more people than we do, but we don't. So we're going to have the ability to have a little more green space, but we do need to be able to do the setback, and candidly, The landscape buffer on the north side, which is along the piece where there's about 6 pieces of residential property, that is a neighborhood that is, a good many of them are rentals. It's a nice neighborhood built in the 1960s. Harold Roberts built it, did a good job, good guy. He's no longer with us. But the area up there, we certainly will want to do, it will be a fenced and heavily landscaped, and if we need some type of density calculation as far as tree calipers and all, I'm sure Mr. Wood can address that. But in conjunction with that, we want to be able to have those units up closer to what would be considered, I guess, a street. And we're asking to go to 20 feet. And I went out today to Hawthorne and took my handy dandy tape measure. Those units from the back of the curb to the front of the building are 16 feet. I did it 2 places. So we're not asking for anything untoward or less than what is already in the area. So we have, again, we have that stream problem. It's a wonderful place and it's a nice little stream, but it is primarily a runoff ditch for DOT. They create a fair amount of accelerated runoff by when paving I-20 because they took 19 acres of basically a 75, 80 acre site is a pretty good percentage that they took for I-20 right of way. So if there's anything I've missed, Mr. Wood, do you see anything? I'd like to turn this over to him. And if you have any particular questions, they have studied this site, they have soil bored it, they have droned it, they have LIDAR, they have topo, so he can answer any particular questions.
Kenneth Wood, 350 Research Court, Peachtree Corners, Georgia. To kind of elaborate, and one thing I can go over to make it a little bit easier. You guys received the letter about the parking. Originally, we had a parking variance, and we're withdrawing that because it's not needed. The other thing that we can do to kind of summarize this a little more as we've been looking at that parking variance is the 30-foot buffer that runs around the outside. I believe it's required against the school and against the top. I believe, Ron, that's correct. On those 2 places, if that needs to remain 30, that is okay. The 2 things that are important to this site is, as what Jeff was saying, the stream and the amount of stream that the eroding basically coming from under the interstate, and we're going to try to, obviously slow this down and make an impact on this site from causing additional erosion going through it, but the stream and the way it cuts through at this angle has really made this a hardship in terms of the shape with the topography and the size. It just makes it a very odd. And so the 30 feet landscape is okay. If we can get the 30-foot setback to equal that landscape, that is what was helpful on the site, and then the stream buffer. Those are the 2 things that are requested to make this a viable site plan for sure.
Okay, so help me understand why you are asking for a landscape buffer variance when you haven't even submitted a landscape plan. How are we supposed to understand that?
So when we were planning the site, and we were looking at the site with the stream buffers, and we were coming up with how many parking spaces we needed, there was no way to fit it within that. And then once we came through, just literally a couple of days ago, Wood Partners sent us their final unit mix and realized that they're doing mostly one bedrooms and some 2 bedrooms and very few 3s. We realized we could reduce the parking a lot, which enables us to ship this down. And so we no longer need that 20. We can leave it at 30 on that.
So are you saying you no longer need the landscape buffer variance?
Correct.
So the item number 1 is not even needed anymore?
From 20 to 30. That is correct. Assuming my corrections are that it is the north and the western side. Those are the 2 places that it would show up.
Okay. All right. Council, do you have any questions for the applicant? All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Jeff, you want to add anything else? You're good at talking.
No, I do think that if you look at your package, you'll see that this is not going to be a minor investment on their part, and they're certainly not coming out here to spend $70, $80 million to do anything that's not top flight. It's top shelf.
All right. Thank you. All right, Ron. Okay, well, I need to do a public hearing. So, is there anybody here who would like to speak for or against this variance application? All right, Ms. Heilman, come on up. Give us your name and address for the record, and we'll give you 3 minutes.
Janet Heilman, 44 Maple Valley Drive, Villa Rica, Georgia. I'm a little bit against it, and the reason for that is because I used to live at Arbor Station in Douglasville, many years ago, and we had a property that was on a creek, a real narrow creek, and over the years that we were there, with the storms and different things, the creek really was out of control, and I mean it ended up flooding our swimming pool, and I'm a little bit worried about that, and so I'm against giving any leeway on the setback, because I think it's important to keep the setback, where the water's concerned, especially because it looks like that setback, all the parking's right there, and I'm concerned about the impervious runoff, because it seems like that would add more surface water, to the area where they're going to have the the thing that contains the water. So that would be my concern.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak for or against this variance application? All right. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Council, do you have any questions for staff?
I do.
All right, Mr. Montahan.
I think at this point, the only request that I'm kind of hung up on is on the setback request. So
You talking about the rear yard?
yeah, so the ordinance requires a 45-foot front setback, is that right? Am I reading that? Did I remember that right?
No, it would be a 35-foot front yard
35
setback
foot.
for a local road, yes, Commerce
Okay.
Drive.
And so they're proposing to do a 20-foot setback
That's right, yes,
and on everything, so it'd be like a 20-foot perimeter setback.
that's right.
And if,
Go ahead.
well, I was gonna say, so is the front yard setback is considered to be along Meadowlark over there? Is that what
The front yards, let's see, I just had to open up this site plan. Thank you. So,
Is it just here?
yes, it is. It's just there. I
Okay.
consider.
So that's
on
only on
61.
Commerce.
Commerce, okay.
That's right, only on Commerce.
I can address a little bit of this.
Sure, go ahead.
Sure.
So, if you're looking at the plan, it is a mixed-use plan. And so the front setback has no bearing on the multifamily. The front setback only occurs here. The commercial parcel that is here is a parcel that, it's not the biggest parcel, it's 0.9 acres. And so there's some different type of uses for commercial you can put up there, but really that 35 down to 20 is more for the commercial. If Jeff has a user that comes out and says, hey, I want to push the building toward the road and park in the back, that's where that's trying to get relief from. And so the front yard setback variance is for the front here. The rear yard is the place where we have the biggest issue. As you can see, we kind of get squeezed from here. Getting really technical on this, this building here would not need any variances to a setback. It's really up in this area where it gets crunched, and the density is kind of up in this area where the setbacks are important. So we were just trying to keep it more consistent, in that, or in the way you can kind of look at that and saying 20 feet all the way around.
Okay.
But keeping in mind, the 20 on the front, now that we're saying the 30-foot landscape strip around is fine with us because we've been able to relook at the parking. I mean, might as well just say 30.
Right. Well, I mean,
30 and 30.
But also, so on the out parcel, on the commercial out parcel, I mean, as we sit here today, you don't have a occupant tenant that we could say is going to come forward to us with a proposal to put it at 20.
Correct.
So, it seems like it was kind of speculation for me to go ahead and get you a setback on something when I don't have a plan in front of me to actually build something, or if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, if that person comes along and they can then ask for they can show me that plan to say, well, I would like it because of X, Y, and Z, whereas.
Sure.
Right, okay.
Okay, so, all right, is that it?
I think the other issue is, though, the fact that we're doing this, that out parcel is its own parcel, right? Is it separated out? So how can that be a front setback of multiple parcels? These are all different parcels. I mean, technically, wouldn't this be the front of this parcel
No.
here?
No, because
No?
it's got to be public road frontage.
Okay.
So it all is,
So
it does have to
technically
be
would
part
right
of this
here, 'cause
application.
This is your only frontage on the public road,
That's correct.
right? So do you need the 35 foot on that? Or excuse me, the 20 foot on that?
Hmm.
Okay. So, okay. I think I got it.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you, sir. And did I hear Jeff say that he used his handy dandy tape measure and it was 16 at Hawthorne? Is that what you said?
Okay.
All right. Any other questions for staff? All right. Does anybody want to be, I assume since you no longer need the landscape buffer variance, someone would probably just move to deny that so we don't have to deal with it later. Anybody wish to be recognized for a motion?
So is that denied
Or can they withdraw it?
Is that denied or just
You wanna
removed?
deny it or withdraw it? Why don't we just deny it? That'll,
Yeah, just process.
The applicant says they want to withdraw it.
well, how are they gonna withdraw it? They're not up here.
The
Unless we just
Well,
skip it.
I think you can deny it. If you do, then that prevents them from reapplying for some period of time.
You don't need it? All right, I just wanna clean it up. Will
Yeah.
somebody make that motion?
Let me find it.
Oh. Everybody's losing
Are we
their
ready?
place tonight.
Okay.
If you will do it.
Okay,
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion. Okay, I did lose my place, I'm sorry.
Oh, my Lord.
I move to deny the landscape buffer variance request from MCC LLC of Villa Rica, Georgia.
All right. I have a motion to deny the landscape buffer variance request from MMCC LLC of Villa Rica. I have a second from Mr. Carter. Is there any discussion? All in favor? All right, that's unanimous. That variance be denied.
You have to realize there's like 10
Would
attachments.
somebody like to be
to this.
recognized for number 2? Nobody? Would anybody like to be recognized for number 3?
I'll make a motion for number 3.
All right, go.
I move, well, I thought I had the motion, but I don't now. I move to approve the variance request to reduce the side and rear yard setbacks to 30 feet as presented.
What about the front? That was included.
He's modifying the motion.
I modified the motion.
Is there a second on that modified motion?
Second.
There is a second. All right. So,
And
Mr.
did your motion specifically include changing the 20 feet to 30 feet?
Yes.
Okay.
Would
I'm
you
going to ask you to read that again since it's
Okay.
not here. So, and I've already got a second from Ms. Martin. I just want to hear you say it.
Okay. I move to deny the variance request to reduce, no. I move to approve the variance request to reduce the side and rear yard setbacks to 30 feet.
Okay. Are you saying the front, side, and rear
No,
yard setback?
I'm
You're
saying
leaving
just the
front
side and
off
rear.
on purpose. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I guess I don't understand that because the variance request is 20 feet.
Right,
Yeah,
with-
he doesn't-
but they've already said that with the landscape requirement, they don't need it to be 20 feet. They can live with 30.
All right,
So
I have a
we're
second
altering.
from Ms. Marchman. Is there any discussion? No. All right, all in favor of the amended motion? All right, that's unanimous. Wow. All right, somebody ready to do number 2? All right. We're not-
Okay. I'm sorry. I don't want to do it, but okay, fine. I move to approve the variance to encroach into the 50 and 75-foot stream buffers in areas as indicated on the supplied site plan dated June 22nd, 2021.
Well, that was easy. What hurt?
The fact that I had to make it an approval.
All right, is
instead of
there a
denial,
second?
That's what
Second.
hurt.
All right, I have a motion from Mr. Momtahan, I want to say that clearly, to approve the variance to encroach into the 50-foot and 75-foot stream buffers in areas as indicated on the supplied site plan dated June 22nd, 2021, seconded by Mr. Carter. Is there any discussion? Ms. McPherson.
Yeah, just briefly, since there was some concern about, water overflowing and that sort of thing, my thinking is that you're not putting in however many millions into this to have it flooded. So I'm assuming that whatever engineering you've done, that what you have there will handle the water runoff.
Yeah, absolutely. So like up at Arbor Place, there's so many different, places, residential, commercial, that do not have the current type of stormwater techniques. What we're proposing here on the other side, we have almost an acre of stormwater facility. You guys require runoff reduction now and water quality. And so the amount of stormwater that we're going to have to hold will actually be making an improvement. Right now you have different parts of that land up front. This commercial has no stormwater management now, different parts that are cleared and open, and so we should make a substantial difference to the good on what we're doing in terms of stormwater management for the site.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
I'm feeling awfully generous tonight. This is not the time for anybody else to speak. So, does council have any further discussion amongst you?
Nope.
All right, all in favor? All right, that's unanimous. Whew! All right, Ron, you can go sit down.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, here
Council.
we go. Financial update. Jennifer Heilman. Good to see you, Jennifer. Go ahead.
Glad to be here.
Go ahead. Is it, we're waiting on it to come up? I think we got it. Jim, can you take solitaire off of everybody's tablet? Is it? Yeah. I'm just kidding. Nobody has solitaire.
Okay,
Honestly,
here we go.
part of the problem is flipping back between the exhibits.
Yeah,
Go and
true.
look at the site plan, da-da-da.
Yep.
Yeah, and keep going, keep going. Mm-hmm.
All right, go ahead.
All right. This is as of November 30th. The cash we had on hand, total cash with the CD, is $27.5 million. General fund makes up just under $10 million. Water and sewer fund, $3.5. We still have the ARPA funding of just under $3 million. And SPLOST for Carroll County 2015, 1.3. Douglas, 2.3. And Carroll 2021 SPLOST is 4.6. The residential permit and taps, you can see so far this fiscal year we have 18 compared to the 39 in building permits and 8 in water taps and 39 in sewer taps. So we are seeing improvement than what we were seeing last fiscal year. Local option sales tax is still coming in strong. Carroll County sales tax is at $167,000, which is a 10% increase from the same time period last year. And Douglas County sales tax is seeing 11.5% increase. We have two enterprise funds, the water and sewer fund. You can see the total revenue is just under $1.5 million. It has declined just due to the water and sewer taps from the prior year, as well as there was a $93,000 development fee for a lift station that was received last year that was not received this year. The increase in expenses is due to around $55,000 in chemicals for the sewer expenses, $41,000 for some maintenance and repairs on some equipment, and then some salary and benefits due to some less vacancies this year than last year. Sanitation and solid waste, you can see that our revenues are a little bit more than they were last year, and our expenses are around the same, and right now we have a net income of $88,000. Self-funded insurance is performing well this year. As you know, last year we kind of had a hard hit because it was 1 in 5 years usually is a high claim year. So far, going into the first 2 months of this year, you can see that we have a total savings of $120,000, and our bank balance is just over $900,000. That is it.
All right, any questions for Jennifer? All right, thank you, ma'am. That was easy. All right. No? You don't want to do it tonight? Okay. All right, that's fine. Okay, so we've reached the end of the regular agenda. I want to recognize in the room our Commissioner Chance from the Carroll County Commissioners, Board of Commissioners. I hope I don't miss anybody. I'm not real good at that. We are about to go into executive session. I'm going to ask Mr. Mecklin to read that off for us, and then I'll ask somebody to make that motion. We'll go into executive session, and then we'll be gone for some period of time, and then we'll come back and go back into regular session and possibly have another discussion. Go ahead, David.
All right, there's going to be a motion that the city council go into executive session pursuant to the attorney-client privileges provided by Georgia Code Section 50-14-2. A meeting otherwise required to be open was closed to the public in order to consult and meet with legal counsel pertaining to potential litigation, settlement claims, or other actions brought or to be brought by or against the agency. And the matter discussed. That's it.
Make that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second to go into executive session for the purposes stated by the city attorney. Is there any discussion? All in favor? All right, that's unanimous, and we will be in executive session.